Georgia, the whole day through, yeah, 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 yeah. Come an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Yeah, I'm talking about Georgia, yeah, Georgia.
Welcome, everybody. You know, every fourth Sunday, Joey Stuckey is here on the show. Joey is an official music ambassador for Macon, Georgia, which is the southern rock capital of the world. He's an award-winning blind guitarist, songwriter, singer, composer, producer, radio and TV personality. He is a personality, a big one. Like, he is always so much fun. He is a music columnist, an educator. Yep, he's always teaching us stuff, and a sound engineer. And we're very excited because today, normally we talk about holidays and all of that, but today we get to talk about his brand new EP that is coming out June 28th. So only in a few days. So check out the show notes because I have a link in there that you can go and see where to get it and pre-order it and all that good stuff. It's going to be everywhere on streaming platforms and limited edition numbers of CDs. But you can go to joeystuckey.com. That's an EY at that Stuckey. Because, you know, it's Stuckey. Ooey gooey Stuckey. How are you, Joey? I don't know why.
I'm well, my friend.
It's ooey gooey. Well, that's because I always think about Stuckeys now with chocolate and, you know, stuff that, you know, at the side of the road. You know, the roadside stop-offs.
I've been called worse things than ooey gooey.
Well, you know, it's like, it's pudding. You and I love England. Nancy, you and I always talk about England. And it's like, you know, sticky toffee pudding, you know?
Absolutely. That's some good stuff.
Yeah, it is. Oh, listen, I was listening to the EP and Nancy and I both love it. And we love the fact that it's an acoustic CD and everyone is called Joey Stuckey Live from Macon, which is where his recording studio is. And, this is an in-studio recording, but I think this is very interesting because I just did another recording with the musician James Byfield. His name is Blind Lemon Pledge, the music name, right? And he's done blues for years, roots music, Americana, really gets in southern stuff. And he's out of the Bay Area. And, you know, he's been on our show for, I don't know, donkey's years. And God, did I just say donkey's years? Cause we're taking care of a donkey dog. Yeah, I did. But, we were talking about it and he got to this point. He just went, that's it. I'm done with everything being any extra instrumentation is stripped down. And he has a bass player and a drummer, but you really stripped it down. And I feel like when we were talking about this, and I want to ask you about this, you've got some great Georgia music on there, by the way. It's stripped down. And I think at this day and age with AI, and what's happening in the arts world, and I mean all arts, right? That we're kind of going to start wanting to let's get to the roots of things. Do you feel that as a musician? Does that lean anywhere towards why you decided to just strip it down and be you and a guitar?
Well, I mean, I definitely, you know, have some concerns about AI. There's certainly some laudable things that it can do. And in the thing that I think about is being senses and abilities for people that are disabled. So if AI can be my eyes or be somebody else's hands or, you know, something like that, that I think is a wonderful way to use technology. But I'm not for computers creating music. I'm not for artificial intelligence creating music. I think as a tool, they certainly have a space. I mean, if you look at the Beatles documentary, Get Back, they use AI in there to help clean up some of the vocals. What they did was actually train the AI to recognize John Lennon's voice and to be able to strip his voice away from other sounds. So they were able to really clean up some of the conversations and clean up some of the music. And last year in 2023, when the Beatles released a new song and it had, you know, obviously it had John Lennon's voice on there. They had tried to use that before back in the 90s, but they couldn't separate John Lennon's voice from the piano track because he just had a very primitive recording of him playing piano and singing. But with the AI technology they developed for the Get Back documentary, they were able to do that. So that's all to the good. And that was able to let us have a new Beatles song. So, there are some wonderful things, but as far as AI is making music for big corporations instead of artists, 100% against that. It didn't really fall into, why I decided to do it so stripped down. The AI wasn't really part of the calculation, but it's certainly, I think, one of the exciting things about the record is how human it is, because it was just me and a guitar. And what we'll do, and we'll put this in the show notes, but there's a little new 11-minute documentary that we came up with in mid-January of 2024 about me and my music. And I believe we released it in March, if I remember correctly.
Yep. Around that time.
Yeah. And so what I did was, and those people who are into film, you'll know what B-roll is, but basically what I did to intersperse amongst the interviews and the other footage of me walking around and playing with different bands and stuff like that. I sat down for 45 minutes, played 8 songs, and just in the studio, just me and the guitar. And we did that, videoed it, and did it so we'd have songs to cut to in the documentary. And, I played kind of some of the most popular songs that I do, both originals and covers. And I did 8 of them. And then people were so impacted by the music that we did for the documentary. The idea was kind of floated, well, why don't we take those songs and make it an EP and release it? And so I, because everybody was saying, what you do with just you and a guitar is so powerful. People should hear that outside the live show. So that was the real reason that we decided to do it. And it's not really, there's no real, studio magic. I mean, when you listen to the record, especially with headphones,
that's how I did it.
Yeah, you can hear me leaning into the microphone, leaning back from the microphone.
It's real.
And I'm just working the mic like I would in a live show. And it's just me in the room with the acoustic guitar. And so I chose 6 of the 8 tracks that we did, and decided they were up to my standards, and I liked them. And 3 of them are covers, and 3 of them are originals. And so that was it. And so that was the real reason. But I haven't really released new music since 2020, partly due to COVID, and the live music industry has certainly been impacted by that. It is still different, more challenging to navigate than it used to be pre-COVID. So, but yeah, I mean, I just decided it was time to release something new. I had been working on a full album, but I've been so busy working as a producer for other artists that I just hadn't had time to finish the full album that I sort of started putting together back in 2020. And so, this just happened. This album really just sort of fell into my lap in the sense that everybody's like, people are really enjoying the documentary. People are really enjoying. We had I can't remember the number, 60,000 views on Facebook of the documentary, which is impressive considering that it's 11 minutes long and people have no attention span. And we had about, I think, between 1,500 and 2,000 views on YouTube. And we had lots of people commenting and saying how much they enjoyed it and how much the music sounded good and how much they liked just the guitar and vocal. And so it just really kind of came about.
It's intimate.
By accident.
It's intimate.
Really.
It's intimate. Just listening to it, I was like, oh, cool. Because I remember you posting whipping posts, and we've talked about that on the shows before. And and I love that version you do of it. It's a little jazzy, but at the same time, it's like your way of doing it, and it's stellar, and it sounds so good. It's like you've got this jazz and soul at the same time throughout the whole EP. Honestly, that's a lot of that to me. And at the same time, your guitar work, I was thinking about that today. Richie Havens is one of my favorite performers, favorite guitarists, favorites, because he used his guitar. He used his guitar in a way that I think gets overlooked a lot and very rhythmic. and you have that too. You've got a lot of rhythm in your playing, and I don't know how you do it, but you do. You're leading us here, there, and everywhere, but still staying on it, right? And Richie Havens had that tenacity, and he had that dynamic, but he could do a lot of rhythm work, fast, jazzy, choppy, then slow down. Does that make sense? Like with Richie Havens?
No, totally.
I mean,
Yeah,
I loved it. I loved his thumb would come over his frets,
Yeah,
big thumb, and his big thumb matched his toes too. Sorry.
Well, it's interesting because I mean the thing about being on your own and just you is that you don't have to worry about anybody else following you. And live, one of the things that I pride myself on is improvisation and spontaneity. But you've got, in my case, you have at least two other people that have to follow where you go. And when I play with my trio, and so you still have to consider those people, and you have to not go so far out on a limb that they don't know where they're going and they can't follow you. So it restricts you a little bit in what you can do. And when it's just me, it's a lot of fun because there's, I'm just playing whatever my imagination comes up with at the moment. And I don't have to worry about somebody else keeping up or, say, and so, like in Whip and Post, you'll hear me playing a bass line along with the chords. There's some of that in some other places. There's a lot of interesting, chords that, maybe I wouldn't be able to play quite as with the improvisational skills that I have. I wouldn't be able to play with the trio because I'd have to know, oh, he's going to change this and alter this chord. So that's kind of, it's a lot of fun. The only thing the record's missing from the live experience is some of the storytelling and jokes that I put in. So you'll still have to come see the live show for that.
Yeah, you have to see the live show and then watch the documentary too. But yeah, that whole thing is like, but that's what jazz is, right? Jazz is about being able to take you on a trip, right?
Sure.
You don't quite know where you're going, and you have to trust. You have a trust factor with the band, right? And the musicians performing.
And that's right. And the guys in my trio are not jazz players. And they're very talented and very gifted, or I wouldn't work with them. They're also good people. But my background is a lot more jazz than their background. The only thing about I guess the only sort of regret about not having a trio backing you, or drums and bass backing you up, I can't play a lot of lead guitar stuff because I'm known for my lead guitar work. And I can't really do that when it's just me. I do a little bit.
But your guitar and soul comes through, and that's what balances it out.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. I do a few riffs and a few little, like in Georgia on My Mind, which I'm really known for doing. I'm singing something, and I play a really, really fast. I'm singing kind of softly, and you can hear that I'm leaning into the microphone, and I play this really fast lick kind of underneath when I'm singing. So there's a couple places where you can tell that I'm a lead guitar player and can do some interesting things, but there's no one else holding the fort down, so you can't just solo with nothing underneath it. You got to have real support. So that's the only regret. But I mean, I've just had so many people respond to just the live show and just me and the acoustic guitar in such a powerful way that it seemed like it was the right time to do it.
Well, and there's something too, like I used to do a lot of live shows, just me and the guitar, and I had to learn to just trust myself. Because I'm not a guitarist, but I learned certain things. I was like, oh, I can do this and sing. But I had to really school myself, and it is a trust form to be able to improvise and do that free form, because that's the beauty of it. And when you step outside the norm, that's the joy. And especially with covers, like you've got Melissa, Georgia on My Mind, Whipping Post is your covers on there. And it's like, okay, Melissa, that's a hell of a guitar song too.
Oh, Melissa
Melissa is crazy. All the changes, there's all kinds of, dude. I was like, you put Melissa on there, and I listened. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty damn cool, man. Because they did so many like changes in there, but subtle. And like and when you know that song, you know those changes. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
you got cojones, dude. And you worked it out and you made it work. So it's good.
It's true. Whenever
man.
the two things I'd say to that would be, one of the things I love about that song is it uses a lot of a trick, or I guess I'll say a technique that I use a lot in my own compositions, which is using common tones. So one of the things that happens on that song, with the exception of one chord in the bridge, the E string is constantly open and ringing on the top E. And so it's kind of fun when you play it with the first chord of the song, which is the E chord. It's the root of the chord. The next chord, which is an F sharp minor 7, it's still the E still playing there, and it becomes the 7th of the song. And then when you move it to the G sharp minor, it becomes the add 6th. And when you move to different chords, when it's B, it's the 4. Or technically, I guess it would actually be the 11 because it's past the octave. Anyway, the point is, that E stays ringing through the whole song, except for one D chord in the bridge, and that's called a common tone. When you keep a note like that ringing the whole time, and it just changes function depending on what chords it's being incorporated to. And what's so beautiful about that is that allows you to play some very interesting altered chord forms without jarring your ear, because your ear is still grounded on that common tone, that note. So I really like that. I really like that a lot. And then the second thing I'd say is, it does take some courage to play somebody else's song, because especially when the song's a hit or something iconic from a band.
Free Bird.
Yeah, exactly. Because
Melissa and Whipping Post are, you got to get it. You got to get it.
You got to get it right. And with Melissa, I didn't take a whole lot of liberties. There's a couple little minor things, like the way I end it is very different than how the Allman Brothers ended. I have a little ending that I do that's different. And I think that's the biggest sort of change. There's a couple little vocal things that are a little slightly different, but your choices are really, you either have to totally make it your own, or you have to make it sound like exactly like the record that it comes from. And I don't like the latter choice.
No.
So I like to make them all. I like to make everything my own. I mean, if I wanted to hear the Allman Brothers play it, I'd put the record on and go see them live.
Yeah, no, because it was your version, and that's, when you listen to it, it's like, because you keep us interested, right? Because when you love certain songs and you love certain bands like the Allman Brothers,
sure.
I mean, and that's, even Whipping Post has that interesting thing of how they always built off of what they started. Like they would make good bakers. They built off of something, it's like keep adding. We're going to keep going. And then we're going to be like,
there's a solid foundation, and you can add a lot of stuff on top.
They always build and build and build. And it's like, but they just kind of like, it's interesting because in other music, it's so fast, right? You're going to build you and like, and this, they just kind of did this progressive, not prog rock, progressive kind of, we're going. It's like kind of like being on horseback, right?
Yeah.
When you're on horse, you start walking your horse, and then you're not going to go into a full gallop you slowly start, and then all of a sudden like, oh, hell yes, we got a free field, like nothing on it. Let's go. And then you got to simmer down. And so they really did it with that little jazzy part that kept you always like, okay, you're progressing, but it keeps you aware and focused, but like, always interesting. And that's what you did with your own style of theirs. That's because I think by keeping that jazz element, you keep it so interesting, and then the soulful part of singing, and just keeping it very real, which I really appreciate. That's where I was going with the AI. The AI makes everything so pure and crisp and clean and pretty. And like, I'm looking, I know you're a blind musician, so you're not seeing all the images that musicians are now doing. here's my headshot. I have a friend who's a musician and she's like, well, I can't afford a headshot. So I did it as AI. And I'm like, okay, it doesn't look that bad, but you can tell it's not authentic anymore.
Hmm.
So it's not bad. It looks good. I'm like, I need to be touched up like that. Hell yes. Heck yeah. I'm like, every time we're on Zoom, I'm like, damn, there's there's some benefits to being blind, Joey. I'm just saying,
Oh,
but
I know.
it's just, oh, I think in music, I mean, I was doing some video work the other day and they're like, here, create this through AI. And I'm like, music to go for it. So I played around with it and I was like, yeah, it's elevator music. But there's one thing missing, soul. And I don't care what you're doing. Yes, you can have that background music and it's going to make a video that YouTube's happy with and everyone's happy with and legally fine. But we're now actually expanding away from what music needs to have, which is the musicians create it and they have soul, right? And
Yeah, I
so
think so too.
there's this is why I'm so excited about your EP because I think it's going to spiral. I think it's going to do a twirly whirly just now where everybody's using AI and then it's like we all realize that we're eating really bad sugar,
Yeah,
right?
it's like
And
it's like
then,
junk food. Yeah,
yeah, and we're going to spiral around and have mocktails later. That's what's going to happen. But we need to actually go back to our roots. And so I think this AI thing, like you're saying, there's so many positives. There's a huge amount of positives. And if we could focus on that instead of this stuff, I'm trying to watch my language. You know me, Joey.
well, I mean,
Um,
again, I mean, I'm
yeah.
a humanist. I believe that
Ooh, I
AI
love
should stay in
that.
its. I believe that AI should stay in its lane. I don't
Mm,
think it should be taking, the creative aspect away from anybody. If you want to use it as a tool, that's fine. But I mean, where does it stop? I mean, I'm all for Isaac Asimov's three laws of robotics. I don't want to be murdered by a machine in my sleep.
hell no.
I mean, granted, it's unlikely, but it's something that it's reasonable to think about that stuff. Stephen Hawking, a very brilliant man, had a real fear, I guess would be the right word, of AI, and started a think tank about the moral and ethical and scientific questions regarding AI. And I think there are a lot of moral and ethical questions that need to be sorted. I mean, one of the criticisms is that some of the major companies, some of the major streaming companies, are going to use AI to create music that sounds
Hmm.
like famous artists, and then they don't have to pay those artists. They can retain
It's
all the money
happening.
from the stream. And
It's
so
happening.
that's
That's
bad.
what I was talking about.
That's
It's
bad.
happening.
And, and so, I mean, that's just not good. And part of it, the other thing is, by and large, fans of music take pride in supporting the bands and artists that they love.
Yes. There's a
They take pride.
connection.
Yeah, they take
Yeah.
pride in buying that T-shirt and buying that
And meeting
that
at
CD.
meet and greets. Yeah.
Yeah,
They want to go to the
but
merch table mostly to meet and
and
support.
right, and so they like to think, oh, I'm supporting the band that I like, so they can make more of the music that I like.
Hmm.
So when you have an AI who's not a real artist, I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, there was that fake artist scandal where one of the big streaming companies was basically hiring session musicians to come in and make music that sounded like some of the famous bands. And
Yep.
again, they were trying to keep the revenue from that and not pay artists. And, a lot of people were very upset about that for a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons was that they were not supporting real artists. They
Yeah.
were the money, they were not able to give their money and their time to real artists out there. These were fake, what they called the fake artist scandal. So there's a lot of stuff like that, that goes on. And, interestingly, I've been doing keynote addresses for a long time
Hmm.
all over the world. And I do a lot of speaking engagements. And my big talk for the past year, really right when, or a little bit over that, really right when the AI was really starting to come out into the forefront. And it had nothing to do with AI. That was not the reason I was doing the talk. But it coincides, sort of dovetails. But one of the things I talk about in my talks these days, this talk is called Sound Blindness, A Return to Critical Listening. And one of the problems that we're having in the music industry is people are making musical decisions with the wrong sensory organ. So what I mean by that is if music is consumed by your ear, and if you're making decisions based on some graph on a screen, you're making decisions with your eye, and the eye is not how we consume music. Now, music video, music fashion, absolutely, but we're talking about the actual sound recording. So your eye, it's like me saying I want to bake a pie and judge its quality based on how it sounds. That's crazy. You taste a pie, you smell a pie, you don't listen to a pie. So it's the same thing with your eyes. You don't, so I talk about human truth and mathematical truth. And I won't go way down the rabbit hole, but it really dovetails with AI, where we're talking about soul and character and vibe versus mathematical perfection.
Well, okay. Humans add the texture.
Yeah.
That's it. If you're going to talk about pie, I'm going to taste the crust. I want the crunch on the crust, and I want the soft on the inside of the crust, right?
Right.
I want that crust to have crunch and softness, right? And then I want like not just pure nothing, like soup inside. I want texture, right? In the pie, right?
Yeah.
But I want to say this because I can't stand, I have to say this. Don't you think Milli Vanilli were ahead of their time? If they knew about AI, they would have made it.
Yeah. I mean,
they skated through okay. But
that was basically the same thing as that fake artist.
But that was still human, and they were good.
Oh, very good.
Damn. I actually know there is an individual that created an entire AI resume, AI human persona, created and did it over a number of years, enough to be believable and check this, check that. So when they entered an artistic competitive zone for a competition jury thing, they passed and no one knew they were AI.
Wow.
How about that?
That's crazy.
That is nuts. That's where we're at. So that's why I go back.
It's interesting to see now that you're seeing people say in the official rules of contest, AIs are prohibited and stuff like that. That's
right. And now you're seeing AI, label this, if this is an AI generated, on photo sites and stuff like that, stock agencies, you have to say this is AI generated. And not all of it is bad. Sometimes it has that feel, but you can tell it's weird, Joey. You can tell if you listen, you can tell. Yes, you can tell auto tuning and stuff, right?
Oh,
and if it's a disco song, who cares, right? That doesn't matter because it's that kind of sound, that kind of thing. But when you're doing acoustic, and that's why I say what is so important about this EP, I think people are going to do a spin around and go, God, I just want someone to pick up a guitar and sing and be human. And that was my point about this. And you've got some originals, which I've heard before. Now, Hate You, this is, I'm like, Joey said this. Joey's like most Mr. Friendly. He wants, you are so there's no, and you do call the truth on stuff too. So let me just say, he's a very kind human being. I'm making sure everyone knows, right? But, everyone knows you on that, but you're going to call stuff out if it's, needs to be called out.
Well, that song was an early composition in the early 90s. And, it was on my very first album. But it's one of the songs that the band loves to play. I love to play. And it's a favorite among fans. And it is a real dichotomy because I am very upbeat and positive. I am, I love everybody, and all that kind of stuff. But there were I was dumped by a girl, because she decided that she didn't want to be with a blind person. And it ticked me off. and so it was really, I was very young, and I just wasn't prepared for the pain of a breakup in general is painful, but then to know why have I met your friends and why haven't I just I don't want to spend my life taking care of a blind person. And the thing is, that was just a ridiculous statement, because while I do have to, I mean, I can't drive, for example, but I'm also not someone that requires, I mean, I'm very independent. I don't just sit around and go,
run a recording studio. You play with all those knobs. That sounds bad.
Exactly.
But you do.
I do love big knobs.
I know. Well, and you cannot lie. But I mean, that's
it was very
amazing.
Painful.
But
it was very painful. And so the part of that, so my mom, I tell this story a lot live, but I played that song for my mom. My mom said to me, son, it's not good to hate anyone, because the only person that gets hurt from hatred is you. Mm. And she's absolutely right. No question. No question. However, trying to sing I don't like you very much at this particular moment in time is very difficult and kind of loses the point. So
or you're gonna have to swear, right?
Yeah.
Like it's either hate you or whatever you.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is that is that era, that age too, right? That young age.
I was full of angst. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're 19, 20 years old,
I know, it's so funny because I've heard the song before, and I'm like, dude, it's just so wild. This is Joey, And then I think you and I were talking about this the other day. Nancy and I were like, holy cow, we found this song, and we're like, that's Joey? That was the song. That was the song. I think we were talking about that last month. I don't know if it was on the show or just Nancy, you and I chatting around, but
we must. Yeah, I don't remember, but
this was the one. Nancy and I were like, dude, that's Joey? Like, sweet Joey, with a very, twisted sense of humor, but like,
oh yeah, gallows sense of humor.
Yeah, but now truth is a misty mountain. And now I have a soft spot for this song because it's like growth. Like, it's kind of interesting because you got Still Me, Sane and Free, right? I like that too, because it means like you can go through whatever and then you come out and it's like, yeah, I go in through it, but here I am crazy. And free, like it's kind of, these three go together. Like that could be its own little album of like, if you didn't know all the backstories,
Yeah.
It kind of goes together, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think
like
so.
When you look at it.
They're again, I just chose, I mean, I have so many songs that I've written, so many songs. I mean, when we perform, sometimes we play 3 and 4 hours. I try not to do that anymore because I'm getting long in the tooth, and I don't want to play that long. We have a huge set that we can draw from live, that I can draw from as well. And I have tons of songs written that have never been recorded. I have a back catalog of songs to record that's a mile high, but these are some of the very ones that are very, very popular when I perform. So I just performed again. Remember, this was not intended to be a record at the time. It was just intended to be B-roll where we could cut to me playing and singing in the documentary. And so I just thought, well, I'll play the most popular songs, the ones that really get the reaction from the crowd, the one people really connect to. I'll play, a few of those, and then that's what happened. But yeah, I think those songs all go together. And Truth is a Misty Mountain is a real song about learning how to get out of a relationship. One of the things that I believe is sort of as a core foundational of my spirit and who I am and all that kind of stuff is that if I can go through a bad time and come out wiser and kinder, then my time has not been wasted. Now that doesn't mean that I want to go through bad times, because I certainly do not. That's
important. That's a really good thing to remember when you go through crap, right?
Yeah, you come out a little wiser, you come out a little kinder. I mean, I try to make the best of it. I really try to let everything I am, both the positive and the negative, work in my favor and give me the life that I value. So, I mean, the fact that I can't see is definitely a challenge for driving and other things like that. But then again, there's a wonderful line from Joan Osborne, who's I think a great artist.
We love her. We were both mutual fans.
Oh yes, and she has a great line about Ray Charles, and it's a song called Spiderweb. It's off her first album.
I love that song. Dreamed about Ray Charles last night.
Yeah, that's it. I dreamed about the lyrics are: I dreamed about Ray Charles last night. He could see just fine. I asked him for a lullaby. He said, "Honey, I don't sing no more." And so I think that everything about you is something you can use to your advantage. The other way I think about life and about music and about spirit and about art is you're over time, as things happen to you, both good and bad, you become more refined as a being. And so I think if you think about how sculptures are made, most of the time sculptors will tell you they take a block of stone and they see what's inside that block of stone and they just carve away the excess and reveal what's in that block of stone. And I think that both good things and bad things carve us and reveal our true, inner glorious being. So that's how I feel about it. I mean,
I love that. I love that. So Carl Perkins said, I'm not going to get the quote right, but really you won't have the sound in the stream without the rocks, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. I'm not saying it right, but, it's one of my favorite things too. It's when you go through hell, whenever I go through any kind of hell, I just put on music and sometimes have a glass of wine and give the world a few choice words, but music. And it's weird how we have songs and certain things. I was thinking about that last night, actually. I was listening to some songs and going through things and I thought, isn't it weird how I actually want to write a thing about this, about the power. I know we've done the power of music. We've talked about that on the show with you before. But it's interesting how we have songs that we know. All right, I'm really happy. I'm going to play this. And you already know, your body knows, I know this song, right? I'm going to get happy about this. Your brain is already trained for that song.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good or bad, right? If you're going through hell, there are songs I know. It'll it's almost like, this song, you know it well. For some reason, you're going to put it on. You're feeling miserable. It's going to make you even more in some way, but it makes you get through it quicker. It's like a speed train, even though the song isn't a speed train, but it's all right, get it out, get it over with, get on with it. Listen to this song, cry, yell, whatever you want to do, move on. Isn't that weird? This power of music, of where your emotion lies. You have songs according to your emotions at times. People have that.
Yeah.
Is that, as a musician, do you think about that when you write, or because really people just take it? There's stuff that is really happy songs that I'm it's not happy for me because of this, it has nothing to do with the musician at all or the songwriter. So that's interesting thing too.
Yeah. The cool thing is, basically I write what I live. So whether it's happy or sad, I'm just writing snapshots of my life or imaginings of how my life might have been or could be. And there's something real cathartic about being able to hear someone else sing at least a part of your story. And so I think one of the interesting things about the human condition is we tend to fall into this trap of believing that we're alone and that no one can truly understand what we've gone through. Mm-hmm. And there is some truth to that. I can't completely understand your journey, but I can empathize because there are characteristics of everyone's journey that are the same. So when you hear someone go, "Oh my God, they're singing my story, or they're singing my song, or I had that same experience," that's a really powerful moment of connection. So there's a lot of therapeutic value there. And so, but the other thing that's really cool about art, to your point, is like I don't really think about how people are going to receive it, the music, because once it leaves me and I brought it into the world, people can listen to it and make it their own and attach whatever they want to it. So, I mean, a song that for me might be, I'll never forget, I have a song on my first album called "I Don't Believe in Much." And it's very tongue in cheek because I'm actually believe in a lot of things. But if you don't listen very carefully to the lyrics, you will get the wrong impression. In fact,
exactly.
I won't ruin it for you so that people can go and listen to it. There's one line in the third verse that changes the entire meaning of the song. And so I've had people come up to me and say, "Man, I've gone through a crisis of faith before, and your song talks about that." And people come up and say, "Oh, I don't believe in anything either. It's nice to hear." I don't really care. Whatever it means to you is fine with me. And then, people have songs they listen to, and because they may have a happy song of mine that was playing on the radio, but they were going through a breakup, so they associate that song,
right. That's what I'm saying.
With hard times.
Yeah.
I can't control that. So, or they may have a song of mine that's a sad song that they're like, "Oh yeah, I was young and in college and in love when this song came out, and I just love this song," even if it's a sad song. So, I don't really think about that. I don't really worry about it.
That's why
people can make it whatever they want.
Artists, musicians, writers should do what they need to do and have integrity to their own art instead of appealing to the audience, right? Because it's always going to be different for the audience, no matter what. It's just the same kind of fact as you can't please everyone. So
that is
once
very
you
true,
learn
and I
that,
do not try.
I've always tried because I'm one of those little perfectionists,
Well, the problem is even if I wanted to please everybody, it's impossible.
I want to make everyone happy. That's just me.
But it's not possible.
No.
I was raised that way. I was raised to try and make everybody happy and raised to be,
it sucks.
It was really, really like, a great host and, try to really just, but, there are people who will not be happy with anything. And,
exactly. You can't.
You're just you're hurting yourself.
You're banging your head against the wall.
You're hurting yourself if you try.
Yeah. Well,
so you just be true to who you are, and there you go.
Yeah. And that the art, that's what is the beauty of art. And when artists do what they really want to do, that's when you have this pure art, right? Without these, there's limitations can actually create even more art.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to say that.
I know all about that.
Yeah. Right. But, so I think that art it's interesting with that, but keep it real. I mean, just keep it real. Like we get so caught up, and I think this world, that's this other thing, part of this AI conversation. Like when I was talking about, here's these photos, headshots that you could take, and basically you have no war wounds, right? Like you have perfect skin. When I was a kid, it was like, how many scars do you have? We used to show off, and now I've got a ton. Like, all right, here, like, just look at my body. Nothing is perfect at all. And I think when you start to grow and learn as individuals and adults, we all learn. And the older we get, the more we go, really get a grip. And that's this interesting phase again with AI with, over perfection, because you can't please everyone. Art is art, and some people will hate it. And if they hate it, that is still a reaction. And watch, 10 years from now, they'll love it. Watch, it happens all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting because, when you try to catch the wave, you're always going to be behind. When you try to create something that's popular, by the time you've done that fad is already gone and you've wasted your time. So if you stay true, if you stay true to who you are, and what you believe, and then the trick is not to be something you're not. The trick is to find your people that respond to what you do and want to be part of it.
Mm.
And that's a whole different conversation about communication and figuring out where the people are that respond to what you do rather than trying to appeal to everybody.
I love that. I do want to bring this up though. Okay. So I was thinking about this the other day of sports music, right?
Yeah.
I have no clue about sports. And Nancy and I, if there's football on the TV, we'll like put like Beethoven or Tchaikovsky, actually, Nutcracker Suite. It goes really well with
sort of
players.
appropriate.
You know us way too well, Joey. We have not met in person, but boy, it doesn't matter. Nothing goes by.
That's right.
So Nutcracker Suite with guys in football uniforms running around.
Yeah,
Anyway, yes. And wrestling, they do some interesting things, but,
Sure.
Anyway, it's funny we're not that, but I do have huge appreciation for those who really put themselves out there, the training, all of that, like what musicians do,
yeah.
same thing.
It's an incredible
all of that.
discipline. Sure.
Yeah. The discipline that goes into achieve your goal, right? So I don't care what it is, as long as you're not hurting somebody.
Absolutely.
That's that goal, right? But there's music that musicians wrote to be a sports song so that they do you know what I mean? Like some people go according to a template and they will make millions off of it.
Oh, sure.
Because and I was thinking that if you write a song that's about football, you're going to make money if it's a good song. Like it has to still have the thing is you still have to be good, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. But if you wrote a football song, I can guarantee you, and you released it in football season and it's a halfway decent song, you're going to make more than if you didn't play to the template. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that's a weird thing to me.
Well, what's interesting is a lot of that music comes from music libraries who, for a discounted rate, will provide you music that are just designed to be played with sports. Typically, they don't have lyrics. Typically they're up tempo rock or hip hop that goes with a certain kind of emotion, certain kind of tempo for basketball or football or whatever. But there are songs like it's
Put Me in Coach.
John Fogerty.
Put Me in Coach. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if he wrote it, I don't know if he did that as a strategy, thinking this will be a classic baseball
tune.
So.
I think
he just wrote it.
I don't think he's that way.
Well. Yeah,
he's a badass. I don't think you can tell him what to do ever.
I would say that's probably true. But yeah, so I mean, there are some songs that have been, and there's another one that Kenny Rogers wrote. I've never heard it in a sports game, but it was a baseball song. And I can't remember. It's about a little boy who was playing, baseball in his backyard, and wasn't very good. I can't think of the name of it.
But that's kind of cool though. So
that was great.
I mean, that's the thing. There's what I'm saying, that people know the temp, like I know, Nancy and I've done gazillions of writing courses and courses and learning our craft, right, of writing.
Sure.
And,
yeah.
And Nancy did a lot in fiction work because she was writing historical novels, but she always goes down rabbit holes and never produces a novel, because she's just like, this is so cool. Did you know? Like, I can't go, there's no way. There's not, like, I swear to God, every time I see Nancy, like, we travel and work together, right? And live together as we go. But like, I get away, do a podcast or whatever. I go down within seconds. I can't even go, hey, Nat, no, here's another weird rabbit hole you need to know about. Like, it's weird. Like, that's her, but it's cool, right? But,
oh yeah, she's great.
But when she went into this whole fiction writing thing, and I did too, and we've done a ton. I've learned, I know how to write screenplays, all of that kind of stuff, right? And that from way, way a long time ago. don't ask me to do it now, but there's a simple formula, right? But it's not. And we both got really pissy about it because everything was a template. You write a children's book. This is how you do it. This is the way, and follow this formula. And it's kind of, and what we're seeing in the world now with AI again, some of it is really cool. It gives you a way to do something that you couldn't do before. And you still have creative input, and you can edit, and you can go use Grammarly, for example. Not a bad tool. And you could say yay or nay, whether or not you want to make the change. I swear to God, people don't actually know their grammar anyway. So
that is true.
That's a whole thing. So, but if you can do that and get ahead and go, yes, no, and you could go look it up yourself or whatever, it makes you slow down and put out something quality versus, I'm just tossing something out there, right, in the world, no matter what, in writing. But what we got kind of grossed out was, like, you write this formula, just change the character, change this scenario, and you've got a novel, and you can make money with a bodice ripper or a children's book this way or whatever. And we both were just like, I get why and how, the psychology behind it, kind of like the Hallmark movies, that people are watching the same movie in a different place.
The same film over and over and over again.
And it works.
That's not to say there's not a couple of good ones, but generally speaking.
I mean, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like we get horrified by it, but the reality, like, people have been making money off of this crap for years.
Sure. Well,
and people like
really
it.
Interesting.
And they like it.
It's interesting you say that, because in music, we have a similar issue, and that is that people want something new, but they don't typically want something so new that it's different. Now, I'm different in that I love new things, but a lot of times people like, they like what they like. I mean, if you look at some of the most famous artists and some of the artists that have made the most money, they tend to be, not always, but nothing is always, but they tend to be very limited in their palette of ideas and tonal colors and stuff like that. And so you can say, oh, I recognize this artist within 2 seconds. I know who it is because that artist is so distinctive. So you get people like myself who can play any style of music authentically, and I can be a chameleon. I play guitar and bass and sing on all kind of people's records. And I play country and hip hop and jazz and rock, and heavy metal, and, all these different things, flamenco and classical and all this stuff. That ability to play so many different styles actually is sort of a detriment when it comes to making music off your art. You're actually better if you've got more limitations, and you only just do what you do. That's really better. So it's kind of an interesting thing. I mean, if you look at some of these big artists, they would never make it as a session player. You couldn't,
God, the session players to me are the people who really know their stuff, man. God,
that's true.
I think they are so underrated in the music world. Like, I want music lovers to understand and start looking at album notes. Well, that's hard now, right? But
yeah,
look at the album notes and see, like Carl Verheyen, he's played on so many albums, right? He's an amazing session player, but look at his actual career too, like what he's done. There's certain people that are just like, they tour, they work with bigger bands, but they're also session players. And in half of the albums that we know wouldn't exist without session players, and the listeners have no clue a lot of times.
Oh, that's true.
And I want to change that somehow. We should do a session player show. Actually, now that I think of it, we should.
That'd be fun.
Invite, because I think in COVID, we started to learn more about that, right? Because they were like, musicians were like, okay, well, I'm going to do a live stream on Zoom or whatever. And, oh, I better get my session players to come in, right? And that's the thing. These musicians are able to, I'm fascinated by it because there's session players in a recording and then session players that can go in and sit for bands that are touring. And they have to, I just think this is this whole other thing that just is not out front in the music world. I think a lot of hardcore music lovers obviously get it, right? But there are musicians that, okay, Neil Young's coming to town. You better know you're going to be the backup drummer. Something happened. You have to be able to sit in just like in a play, right? You're the understudy, right?
Yeah.
In a play, you have to know, but they're practicing along with everybody. No, a session player has to know their stuff immediately, be able to read it on site or get it now and do it now. Like it's pretty intense, wouldn't you say, for musicians to suddenly, okay, so-and-so's coming to town. They're looking for their band, especially when musicians travel to Europe and because of visas and stuff when people, or of Europe coming here or whatever, international travel for bands is hard.
Very hard.
Very, very difficult. Thank you, politicians. Can we fix that? Really,
I agree.
right? But yeah, the session musicians save the day. And yet no one knows who these people are behind the big greats, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of session guys that are making pretty impressive records and, helping to make the records, helping to make the records what they are. I used to be, when I was younger, I used to orchestrate things a lot more and say, here's the part, play it. I've written this part for you on saxophone, even though I don't play saxophone. Here's what I want you to play. And I still have a great knowledge of what I want. But what I do now is I hire the right person for the right job, and then I don't have to coach them as much. Because someone will say, like Randall Bramlett, who's a dear friend of mine and a great session musician, sideman, and artist in his own right, and songwriter. He said to me, I forget what, I guess it was maybe 2019 or 2020 before COVID. He said he was playing on a track. He's like, "What do you want me to do?" I was like, just do you. Just give me the Randall Bramlett sound. That's what this song needs. Just do you." And I really, on that particular song, I didn't tell him what to play at all. And he gave me exactly what I needed. I didn't have to say anything. In fact, he's played on 5 or 6 songs of mine.
Yeah, you've talked about him before. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really proud to know him. I'm really proud to be in his world. I'm really proud to call him a friend and mentor. And he's so talented and just such a unique voice as an artist. But I've said 2 things to him, or actually 3 things. I've given him 3 notes in my entire time working with him. 3 notes. One time he said, "I don't know if this harmony might be too weird." And I was like, "No, I love it. Leave it." So there was that. One time, I said, "Hey, Randall, everything's perfect, but I need you to play one lick where there's a hole in the vocal between this point and this point in the bridge." So he didn't do that. He didn't play it without me telling him. And then I told him to do it. That's one. And then one time I was like, I feel like you're slightly ahead on the chorus of this song. So just lay back in the pocket a little bit more. And that's it. 3 notes in an entire, since I've known him. I've known him from 1996 to present day. And wow. And he's played on 5 or 6 tracks. And those are the 3 notes that I've given him in our entire relationship.
That's amazing.
So, I mean, that's the kind of,
Yeah. I think.
Part of that's choosing the right guy for the right job, too.
Right. And do you get, I like Johnny Mastro and the Mama's Boys out of New Orleans, and he tours, and he's like, I have my European band and I have my American band.
Yeah, I really think I have not been able to take my band over to Europe. We were going to go in 2019 because I had the band sound exactly how I wanted it. I was really proud of it. We had a record out called In the Shadow of the Sun. It was doing really well on radio. We were really doing great. That was going to bring us over. And that's when the whole Brexit stuff was going on. And I said, I called my attorney and said, look, who do I need to talk to about visas? Who do I need to, blah, blah, blah about taxes and all this stuff. And he connected me with an attorney over in the UK. And they said, yeah, it'll cost you £2,500 for us to do all your visa work and your paperwork and all that kind of stuff. And that's what, and then it was going to cost me probably £6,000 or £7,000 to bring the band over.
And then hotel rooms.
Well, yeah. And so my goal was to break even. When I talked to the lawyers, I said, okay, now what guarantee do I have with Brexit and all this stuff? What guarantee of entry do I have to the UK? And they said, oh, you don't have a guarantee because the law is so vague with Brexit and everything changing that it's up to each individual customs officer to interpret it. And so I was like, the hell with this. I was like, I'm not going to spend 10 grand and maybe be able to get in the country and maybe not. And so I decided not to go. And now, I've been touring the UK and Milan and Paris and different places, but I've been just going with me and my guitar. And now I've got enough European friends now that I don't even have to take my guitar anymore, which is a great burden to be lifted. I've got friends in the UK that I just borrow their guitar, and they're good guitars. They're like Martin guitars and stuff like that. And I just borrow their guitars. So I don't have to bring my guitar over anymore. So it's just me and the guitar. But
that means you know your stuff too. Like you're able to go on someone else's guitar and be able to play any guitar. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Any guitar will do.
That's flexibility. And we talked about that once on a show where you were talking about not having rituals because you set yourself up for things to be exactly this way. And that's not really how life works.
That's not realistic. It's not realistic. I mean, so I'm surprised you remember that. I really do not believe in rituals because if I get myself locked into a point that I can't function without something, that sets me up for failure because life is not perfect. Sometimes it's not fair. And if you get set up to a point where you can't perform without something, there will come a day where you're not able to keep your commitment. And I refuse to have that.
Yeah, I'm like that. I mean, podcasts we've been doing this, I realized almost 18 years.
Yeah.
I just realized going through some archives today and I'm like, that's insane. I didn't realize that's a long time. And before the word podcast existed, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. 2005, I was at a music conference in Florida, and I was a panelist on a couple panels. And somebody was saying in the audience, asked a question, what do you think is going to be the biggest new wave in the music business? And I said, podcast. And they're like, what's that? And at that time, if you had Googled podcast, you would have gotten about 20 results.
And look how long it took to find each other.
Yeah, I know. But podcasts, so that's about right because podcasts started kind of showing up around 2005. And then, around 2010, they kind of exploded, I guess.
God, don't even ask me the year. Don't ask me to do math, but we did it. We did it through Blog Talk because Nancy got interviewed. Blog Talk Radio, when they started, was really cool.
I remember.
It was the only place where people could call in and you could be online and like old school radio. And we loved that fact because we were interviewing people when we could put MP3s on the website, and we actually met the family and the parents of the son of the guy that invented MP3s. This was out in Encinitas, California. Our band played for like one of their family functions at Quail Botanical Gardens, which is now in San Diego Botanical Gardens. Yeah, our band played. And that's where I learned about MP3s, was at this event and meeting this family. And they're like, my son invented the MP3. And I'm like, well, what the hell is an MP3? That sounds like something you don't want to bend over for, And lo and behold, we were going around at that time. We had a print magazine and people were getting websites and we were doing our own because we were getting quotes that were insane. I mean, we started our magazine in 97, right? And the websites were coming up, but we had those big Earthlink books and there was no way to find websites. And people were printing business cards without putting their website on it. And we're like, what is wrong with you? Oh, we want this ad in the magazine. And but I'm like, don't you want to put your website in it? Like, how are people going to know you spent $5,000 to $10,000 on a website?
Sure.
And people would find things, serendipitously, which was kind of cool. You know what I mean? Back in the day when it all first started, wasn't the internet cool at the beginning? It was so exciting. And I have to say, when we started podcasting through Blog Talk, it was exciting because they were at the beginning and we were incorporating sound effects. We were making our own, like just out of my mouth on a show kind of thing. We didn't know if things would happen. If things went down, the audience knew. It was kind of like this grand experiment, knowing it was going to get better. And then they sold and then they sold and then they sold and it didn't work anymore. And they're still there and everything. I'm not knocking it, but it's not that, you could excuse things not being right at that time because it was so new.
Yeah.
And we ended up, I remember sitting at one point, we had a cooler in the office, Nancy and I sitting there, and things started growing so much. We had a cooler just for water in the room. We were going from one show to the next. I can't even explain how crazy it was at the beginning of podcasting. How crazy. And it was this new radio form, and we interviewed so many people around the world, and we went from being Southwest to being international. Because
I never did. People have been telling me to do a podcast. I've never done a podcast, but just me. But I did FM radio for years. Mm-hmm. From 96 to 2000, I did FM radio here in town on the bigger stations. And then from about 90, from about 2006 through about 2011, I did internet-based radio. Mm. And then from 2005 to 2007, I did an internet-based TV show. Then I think it was around 2011 to 2015, I did a terrestrial-based TV show on the local NBC affiliate here. And then 2015 to 2017, something like that, I did a web-based radio, a TV show. So I've done a lot of stuff.
You go with what you can do because it's going to change, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like you have to jump into whatever is always there. And even if you say, oh, I'm going to jump in and try it. And, oh, this doesn't work for me. So it doesn't work. Don't do it then. And if it does, do it and know it's going to change again. Because every other day, I mean, that's right. It's like
the
suddenly
one constant has changed. That's right.
It is the permanent thing. And it's interesting. I mean, that's why it's so cool to have an acoustic album because it just we need to go back to our roots at times.
Yeah.
I just feel that. I feel that we need some just simplicity,
Yeah. No,
not that
I totally agree.
your guitar playing is nothing simplistic about it, but it flows simplistically, but you're not playing simplistically. Does that
there's
sound
some weird, there's some weird chords
that's a
on
weird
there.
word. That's a weird word. Simplistic.
Easy for you to say.
Apparently not. Is it cocktail time? No,
apparently so. It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Sounds good. It is somewhere, but Joey, congratulations. A new EP out. Everybody go get it. The 28th, it's out everywhere, right? So
that's right.
if
Everywhere you want to see it.
There's a link in the show notes, but people can also go to joeystuckey.com. Keep up with that. June 28th is when it's out. And go get it. Keep up with Joey. Go to joeystuckey.com and keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. Always fun, Joey. We're going to see you in Georgia this year. It's going to happen. I swear. It didn't happen earlier this year, but it will. Change happened. That's what happened.
That's exactly right.
Talking about podcasting changes. Jeez. All right. Well, now I am going to go have a cocktail when I ever think about what we went through. But thanks as always. But good. It is good to hear that. I love that. I love your rhythm playing, man. I admire what you do with the guitar of that rhythm. That
thank you.
is amazing, amazing work. Good
Thank you very
vocals,
much. I appreciate it.
soulful, good stuff. Thanks, Joey.
My pleasure, friend.
Oh, crossroads seem to come and go.